Welcome to the Three Championship Drive podcast on YouTube, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Follow me on X at Lance Caporossi, the same way you see it spelled on the screen. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the video, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan. On today's podcast, I'm talking Media Day. There were some great quotes from Trajan Langdon to Isaiah Stewart, and I'm here to deliver my honest opinions from those quotes. But first, we got to talk about that preseason win over the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Detroit Pistons beat the Milwaukee Bucks 120-87. It feels so good to start this NBA season with a win. I don't care if Giannis wasn't playing. It doesn't bother me at all. That's a W. I love to see the start of the season happen this way. So here were the starters in case you didn't watch the game. We had Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Tim Hardaway Jr., Simone Fontecchio and Jalen Duren. Bobby Klintman and Tobias Harris were both out with injury. Nothing serious. They just were, taking a rest day. Why not? It's preseason. But it's interesting because I'm going to talk about the rotations here in a second. But Tim Hardaway Jr. getting the start. I tweeted this out that if Tobias Harris was going to be out, I could see Tim Hardaway Jr. starting at the 3 and then sliding Simone Fontecchio over to the 4. And the reason I think that Tim Hardaway Jr. got the start tonight, with Tobias Harris being out, was that he is the veteran that's most likely, again, in my opinion, that's going to lose minutes. Typically, when a starter's out, you want to keep your bench unit intact. So you go with the guys that aren't really part of your rotation, like the third stringers. And I think that's where Tim Hardaway lies right now. Now, maybe JB Bickerstaff is going with a 9-man rotation. I know he kept it pretty tight with 8 in the first half against the Milwaukee Bucks. But if he's going with 9, you can just disregard this. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. then is a part of the 9-man rotation. But if he sticks with 8, I think that Tim Hardaway Jr. is the odd man out. And I just think it's because the tell was for me was him getting the start over, say, a Ron Holland, for Tobias Harris against the Milwaukee Bucks. But anyways, the game started the same way as it looked like the old Pistons. Sloppy passes, no movement. Everybody's watching Cade Cunningham. It was just pitiful. Then they came alive. There was a corner 3 by Jaden Ivey. That was the first bucket of the game. And then the Milwaukee Bucks just came out firing. I think they hit 5 straight threes to start the game. Timeout, 9 minutes came. And then the ball movement got a little bit better. It was still a little sloppy, but it looked a little better. And then after that, the Pistons started going to roll. They took back the lead late in the second quarter, and they did not look back. But some of my notes from the game were Jaden Ivey looked decisive. He looked aggressive. He didn't look like he was hesitating whether he was shooting or get to the rim. We saw a handful of times where he would get the outlet pass on a rebound and just race down the floor and use that athletic ability to get to the rim and catch the defense backpedaling. I loved the transition play from the Detroit Pistons tonight, whether it was Jaden Ivey, whether it was Ron Holland, whether it was Marcus Sasser in the second half. You can tell this Pistons team, they want to get out and run, and that starts with the defense. But speaking of the defense, Jalen Duren, he talked about effort in the offseason, and I think he got a couple steals and I think a block or 2 tonight as well, but he just looked disengaged defensively. Again, I know it's preseason. You got to kind of just take everything with a grain of salt. But man, if you're not going to play with effort on that side and it's already at the beginning of the season, you got to show me something. And this is where this team is going to make strides defensively. And if Duren's not hip with it, you got to put Isaiah Stewart in. And when you did put Isaiah Stewart in, the defense changed. When him and Ron Holland came off the bench, the intensity was different. They were almost saying, hey, you got to keep up with us. Isaiah Stewart, he was out there barking orders. He was being the commander on the defense. That's what I love to see. That was the biggest thing. But also the Milwaukee Bucks, they were challenging Jalen Duren. They were attacking him in the pick and roll every single night. That tells me that's the weak part of this defense. You need a 5-man. That's where all your defense begins. Your 5-man has to be engaged on that side. He can't be a weakness. And unfortunately, tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, we saw that with Jalen Duren. Some other notes that I had, Beasley, knockdown shooter the Pistons needed. This guy came off the bench firing. It was amazing. First 2 shots just sank him. Hit a midi late in the game as well. I love Malik Beasley. He's going to be a huge part of this team. And I don't think it matters whether he starts or come off the bench. This dude is just ready to play no matter what. Again, Bucks going into the second quarter continue to target Jalen Duren. That was something, I think that's something we're going to see all of this season. That's why I think it's so important, the minutes that Isaiah Stewart and potentially Paul Reed give us at that 5 spot. But Duren continued just to be getting attacked. He did step it up a little bit defensively, though, at some moments. Like I mentioned earlier, did get a couple of steals. Ron Holland, to me, looked like a real player ready to play game 1. He came out with intensity, picked a couple people's pockets, was getting rebounds, whether it was offensively or defensively, was trying to push the floor. His IQ was showing where he was hitting the right man. He did have a couple sloppy turnovers. You can tell the handle needs to be tightened up, but him and Asar, that is the thing I am so excited for, because I think these 2 dudes, whether they're starting or coming off the bench this season, they're going to be, if you've ever watched the Mighty Ducks, they're like the Bash Brothers. Then you bring in Isaiah Stewart. The defense off this bench is going to be so much fun. But Asar and Ron Holland, when they get minutes together, I just have a feeling they're going to be locking dudes up this season. And I am just so for it. I cannot wait for those 2 guys just to be getting after it and just running in transition, probably challenging each other to see who can jump higher and throw it down higher and throw it down harder. That I just can't wait. I'm so excited for Asar Thompson. I hope I hope he's healthy and is ready to play. Him and Ron Holland, they are probably going to be the 2 people I talk the most about on this podcast this season. I seriously just love the energy those 2 can potentially bring for the Detroit Pistons. I do want to just touch on Jaden Ivey again. Going into the second half, it really seemed like he had something to prove. I just think Monty did him a disservice. So many of you think the same thing as well. The way he played, it was just almost like I got to shut a few people up. And I was probably one of them that he was trying to shut up because of all the crap I talked this offseason about getting rid of him and everything. But Jaden Ivey, man, just loved his energy, loved his effort, loved the aggressiveness. I can't say that enough. I just love the decisiveness as well from him. And I love that JB Bickerstaff, I mean, other than when he put the bench guys in, to get some looks at these guys, there was not a minute during the first half that Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham were not on the floor. At least one of them was on the floor at all times. I love to see that. They both add different elements to the Pistons. They're both good at finding teammates. Jaden Ivey can use that speed to drive to the rim and kick it out to an open man. We saw plenty of that tonight. Cade Cunningham, a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical. He's going to break the defense down a little ways, but a different way, I mean. But just to have a coach that is going to stagger those guys and keep them on the floor throughout the game and just cause different looks and pressure on the defense. I just love to see that. The ball movement was great. I loved Cade Cunningham relocating. This was something that I felt like he would have to, get better at to take that next step in his career, was just relocating without the ball. You'll love to see that with Cade Cunningham. And then my final note was, I'm going to end a little bit with a negative. It's a con to Jaden Ivey. He played a bit reckless, though, throughout the game. For as much as the decisive decisions he made, that was great. The aggression was great. But there were a few moments where I felt like he was just being a little reckless when driving to the hoop. Hopefully, this new Ivy that we saw is the new Ivy we get throughout the season. But I will forewarn people listening to this and watching it on YouTube. And basically, I'm trying to calm myself down as well, that we have seen good basketball from Jaden Ivey before. And then there are moments throughout the season where, he just looks like an average basketball player. So hopefully this preseason game and the open practice that was just happened a few days ago, that is more telling. And that is telling us that Jaden Ivey has taken strides to become a better basketball player for the Detroit Pistons. Either way, I was excited. Glad the Pistons got the win. Again, 120-87 over the Milwaukee Bucks. No Giannis, doesn't matter. Pistons starting the season with a W. I love it. So now let's get into some media day talk. I wanted to do this a few days ago, but then I remembered, hey, there's a preseason game. Gives me a chance to take some notes, get back in the grind of doing that and talking about it on the podcast. Hopefully you guys are still with me doing the media day, my honest opinions of it. So the first quote comes from Trajan Langdon. He started media day by saying, I don't think the goal for us is wins and losses. We want to win as many games as possible, but it's putting a group together that puts together a Detroit Pistons identity. So I'm interpreting this as expect us to be competitive, but bear with us because we're going to struggle. Don't lose faith in the process, but as the leader of this organization, I got to see what we have before I make decisions. That is all that is saying to me. Well, also, I do want to say that I think Trajan Langdon wants to position himself near the top of the NBA draft to select one of the studs in this upcoming draft, so he can pair him with Cade Cunningham, whether that's a Cooper Flag or I think an Ace Bailey, someone that they can just build with Cade Cunningham. That's all I think that he is saying. Like, we're going to be competitive, but we're not measuring this team with wins and losses. We're going to give them another year of just let's see what we have and let's see where we can go with the group of guys we're going to keep. That's how I'm interpreting that quote. I love the honesty from Trajan Langdon. I know a lot of fans. I saw some fans said that he thinks the Pistons are going to have 41 wins this year. That is crazy. I'm going to temper my expectations. I still think the Pistons are a 25-win team, positioning themselves to still be in the lottery for this upcoming draft where you want to have a top pick in this upcoming draft. I get it. We're sick of the losing. We want to see this team be competitive. And I think we're going to see the Pistons be competitive. But there's also going to be some nights where they throw in the towel pretty early and they put in one of those lineups that I talked about on the last episode, or maybe we see, maybe we see 40 games of Dennis Jenkins because the Pistons aren't in a position to win many games. Who knows? But from Trajan Langdon's honesty, don't expect a lot of wins. And that's not how we're measuring this team. I love that quote from him, though. Second quote I have is from Isaiah Stewart, and he can't wait to get back to playing the 5. He says, to be honest, I love the 5. I love playing the 5. I don't mind at all playing the 4 because it's something I can do. I can knock down the three-point shot. I can space the floor, but we all know it's something that's new to me. Last year was my first season playing the 4 every single game. The 4, it ain't nothing wrong with it, but me, I love to bang. I love to be physical. I love to set the tone. I love to set great screens for my teammates. I like playing the 5, but I don't mind at all playing the 4. I can do both. I am so excited for Isaiah Stewart to be the backup 5 for the Detroit Pistons. I think this is the perfect role for him. This would be a role that you'd see him playing on the Boston Celtics, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, any other contending team. This is the role you would see for him. And I'm going to share some stats with you guys here in a minute that they're going to be an eye-opener for you guys, and just at the disservice Monty Williams did to Isaiah Stewart. I'm glad Isaiah Stewart got to expand his game. I was excited for him to play the 4. I think he's going to be able to take advantage of some 5s offensively, but that's not really where it's at for him. It's that defensive stuff. That's what we're going to see from him. So Isaiah Stewart, he's going to open some eyes this season. He's going to show the basketball world that he's one of the best role players in the game. I truly believe this. So in his first 3 years in the NBA, Isaiah Stewart primarily played the center position. In his first 3 years, he played 4,685 minutes. 4,011 of those minutes were at the 5 spot. He had an offensive rating of 115 and a defensive rating of 113. Those are serviceable. They're not great numbers. They're not going to catch your eye when you're looking at the advanced stats on Basketball Reference. That's not what they're going to do. But what I believe it highlights is the two-way impact he can have at the 5 spot. So before I get into the defensive stuff, let me just talk about one strength of his that we didn't get to see last year, and that was his offensive rebounding. It took a hit because he was playing further away from the basket. When this is a strength of his, it would be wise of the Pistons to get him to play closer to the basket to get the Pistons extra possessions. That's what we want from Isaiah Stewart, using that physicality, that strength, that body of his to block out a guy and get a missed shot and restart the offense. That's something we have been missing, and we're going to get that again from Isaiah Stewart. So his rebounding numbers, I think like his offensive rebounding was like 20 something percent for like his rookie, second, and third year, somewhere around there. And then it took a huge dive in that fourth year because he was asked to play outside the perimeter, and they were trying to change him as a player, which I get. But last year we could have used less James Wiseman and more Isaiah Stewart at the 5. Now his rim protection numbers, this is where it gets interesting for me, because even though Isaiah Stewart is undersized, he can still block some shots. So his rookie year, he had a block percentage of 5.2. And in his fourth year, it was 2.3. I want to see Isaiah Stewart block some more shots. I want to see him protect the rim. And that's something he can do, even though he is undersized. He has a long wingspan, he has a high standing reach. He's still a great athlete. I mean, he's not a Jalen Duren type athlete, but he's a guy that can use his physicality and that length to bother shots. And plus, if he's not starting anymore and he's playing, say, I don't know, 24, 25 minutes a game, as a coach, you can just say, dude, go out there, grab as many rebounds as you can, and try to block as many shots as you can. You can play more freely because, you know, you still have Duren, you still have Paul Reed. The team isn't relying as you as much as he was when he was playing the 4. He was asked to play a larger role offensively. This year, he's getting back to what makes him a special basketball player, and that's on the defensive side. So if he's playing less minutes, you can be a little bit more free and you can take a few more risks. I think we're going to see a jump in his defensive stats this year as a backup 5. So I've talked about his versatility on defense. You can get on YouTube and you can search Isaiah Stewart defensive highlights. Again, these are highlights. And you will see with your own eyes his ability to stay in front of players like Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, and Giannis. And he can make things difficult for them by forcing them into tough shots with that quick footwork that he has. That's the thing I love about Isaiah Stewart. Like, there were so many times in the first 4 years of his career where he was being switched on to like a James Harden or a Jason Tatum. Not going to stop these guys, but he can force them into uncomfortable situations and tough shots with his footwork, with his length, with his physicality. The other thing I love to see when I was watching him play defense in these highlight tapes is that how he uses his body and his strength to match up with guys like Joel Embiid, Julius Randle, and Evan Mobley and force them into tough shots. Isaiah Stewart at the 5 is going to be much better than Isaiah Stewart starting at the 4, just because he's going to be able to be more physical with these more dominant 5s in the NBA, something that the Pistons haven't had in many, many years. We're getting that again with Isaiah Stewart. I'm so excited. I just absolutely love the versatility. He's going to be able to defend a range of 5s in the NBA. The other thing I really loved, even though he's had quite a bit of fouls in his career, they were highlighting how he really doesn't jump on the pump fakes too much. He stays grounded. And I just love that about him. He's such a smart basketball player. And it's unfortunate that last year when he was playing the 4, we really didn't get to see how smart of a basketball player he is. We didn't see him play to his strengths. So it almost gave us like a bad view of him as a player, even though he did expand his game out to the 3-point line. But, I mean, that defense, I would take that over, 38% from the 3-point line. Well, maybe I get them both this year. So my final quote that I want to talk about, this comes from Tim Hardaway Jr., and I find it very interesting. Here's what he said. There's only one Luka, but I definitely see a little bit in Cade Cunningham. His height, how strong he is with the ball, playing against him. He has what it takes. There's no Luka, but he can damn near be close. So the reason I love this quote, I'm not expecting Cade to come out and average 33, 9, and 9, make an all-NBA first team, place top 3 in MVP voting, and lead the Detroit Pistons to the NBA Finals. But the comparison is fair, and it's up to Cade to use his size to his advantage and develop other parts of his games where he can maximize his size, just like Luka does. So there are similarities between the two. With their size, both lack the elite athleticism as some players that play their position. Both create advantages on the offensive end with their dribble by baiting and getting the defenses off balance. They both love to operate in the mid-range. Luka, his average distance on shots is around 16, 17 feet. Cade's is 13, 14. Both love to operate inside the arc. And then they're passing, getting their teammates involved. The biggest difference for me is Luka's playing 4 to 5 more minutes per game than Cade, and Luka is just absolutely lethal inside 10 feet compared to Cade, he is adding a floater. He talked about that during media day, but just inside 10 feet at the rim, Luka is shooting. This is 0 to 3 feet according to Basketball Reference, 83% at the rim. That is absolutely insane. 83% last season at the rim. Well, actually 84 if you round up, and 74% for his career. And then at the 3 to 10 foot range, he's shooting 57%. 10 to 16, 44%. And then versus Cade, on the other hand, when you look at his numbers when it comes to where he's shooting at the floor and at the rim, it's just not very good for him. He is shooting 62%. Now, I mean, it's not bad, but a guy that's 6'6", 6'7", you have a lot of height, and where when you're at the rim, you have an advantage over smaller guards. Now, I know there are centers and power forwards that are roaming the paint looking to stop his shot, but he needs to take a page out of Luka's playbook and figure out how to finish at the rim. The other difference is Luka just gets to the free throw line a lot more than Cade Cunningham. Now, that could be because Luka's better at drawing contact. Maybe he gets a better whistle. I don't know, but maybe Cade Cunningham, if he wants to get to the free throw line and get those free points, especially when you're shooting 87% from the line, you might need to sell some of those hits that you take at the rim just a little bit more. I would love to see Cade get his free throw average up to maybe like 8, 9 a game. That would be great. The other thing is, too, Luka he shoots around 10 3-pointers per game. He's also playing 37 minutes. I think he averages 23 shots per game. Cade, I think, averages 17 or 18 field goals. I want to see Cade be more selfish. I want to see him get that field goal attempts number up to like 22 a game. He has to be the leader. I love that Cade can involve his teammates, but I just want to see him be aggressive right from the jump. I want to see him just catch defenses by surprise and say, hey, I'm not only looking for my teammates, but I'm looking for my shot as well. You're going to have to defend me, because if Cade is more selfish at the beginning of games and looking for a shot, that has to open things up for a Malik Beasley, for a Jaden Ivey, for a Simone Fontecchio, for a Tobias Harris, for a Duran. It has to open things up for them if he's being a little bit more selfish. We've seen Cade Cunningham take over games, especially late, but I just want to see him do it from the beginning to the end. And maybe that has something to do with his conditioning. I know that Cade has talked about how when we've all known he's been banged up, but I believe he said this is the first offseason where he's been fully healthy, where he could actually do a little bit more conditioning. And hopefully that translates, because 32 minutes per game, which is what Cade played last year, I want to see him get that number up to like 35. Well, he played 33 minutes per game last year, so my bad. But I would still like to see him maybe get that up to 35, 36. That is something that I think he can do. That would help out a ton. It would, he'd be on the floor a little bit more. He'd still be able to get a shot and find his teammates. It also gives him some sexier numbers if he's playing like 36 minutes per game, something that I just want to see. I would love to see a guy finish top 3 in MVP voting for the Detroit Pistons. I guess I'm just being a little selfish. So those were the quotes that I found to be the most interesting from media day. There was something from Asar talking about how he relied on his athletic abilities to play defense in this offseason. He was learning how to play defense. That is scary, because I believe he was like in the top 97% for on-ball defense. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what that number was. So if now him learning how to play defense and, how to do these small things and while using his athleticism to play defense, that is scary. And that is going to be scary for the rest of the NBA. There's an elite defender, being developed in Detroit, and he is about to be unleashed onto the NBA world. Jaden Ivey touched on playing for his third coach in 3 years and how difficult that has been. I I can't agree more. It's something that I've never really considered for him. He has not had the structure that some young players do have when they come into the NBA. He's played for Dwayne Casey, then he played for Disaster and Monty Williams. Now he's for JB Bickerstaff. But I will applaud him for the way he has handled it. You know, you don't get any complaints from his team, his camp. You're not hearing any complaints from him. Jaden Ivey is a true pro, and not complaining, but just working hard, developing his game, regardless of who the coach is, not whining when Monty Williams was sitting him on the bench and playing Killian Hayes over him. Jaden Ivey, I applaud you. You are a real pro, and I just hope the best for your career. So then a bunch of the young guys have talked about how Tobias Harris and some of the other veterans like Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley and Paul Reed were stepping up and talking to them about basketball and life and how those conversations have impacted them. And that means so much because we weren't hearing that about Boyan and Alec Burks and, whoever else was a veteran last year. It didn't seem like those veterans were as close with the young guys and kind of helping them navigate the NBA life. It seemed more like last year the veterans were really only in it for themselves and not really in it and not really buying into what Detroit was trying to do. But it seems like this year with these veterans, the young Pistons finally have some guys they can rely on and help them navigate the NBA life. I'll leave it with this. Overall, this team is coming into the season with a different vibe than last year. And it's, even if they only win 25 games, but they're competitive for the entire season. They're not taking days off. People are playing with effort. Nobody's slacking. That's a win in my book. That's a season I can get behind. I'm going to watch as many of these 82 games as I possibly can, regardless of the outcome. And I'm just excited for this team, just based on the media day, how these guys are treating each other. I think Corey Woods had tweeted out during the game that Malik Beasley and Cade Cunningham had a moment, and Cade Cunningham responded in a positive way. But Malik Beasley was, it was a teaching moment for him. We're like, hey, I'm going to take the young fella under my wing. I'm going to give him some knowledge right now. And Cade responded to it. We weren't getting a lot of that last year, but this year we are, and it's only preseason. It's crazy. The vibe of this year is totally different. I am excited for this year's Pistons team, and I hope you guys are as well. But thank you for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do me a favor, go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and hit the follow button. After you hit the follow button, rate with 5 stars and tell me what you were excited about for this upcoming season. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.